Hello everyone, this is Aditya from Computing Olympiad, and in this video we'll be reviewing the ACSL 2019 to 2020 FRQ programming question. Just a couple of things to note before we go ahead and get started. The FRQ question is going to be due on January 7th or January 14th, so you do have just about a week to complete it. And another important thing to note is that once you actually start the contest, you have 72 simultaneous hours to complete it. So make sure you time yourself accordingly because you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to actually write some code and start testing some stuff out. So you do have 72 hours and that time will continue going from the time you started. So make sure you plan this out during the weekend so you give yourself ample time to do this. Another thing that I'd like to mention is once you go to the Google Drive, you can go to ACSL and then go to Contest 1. And then if you go to programming videos, you'll see this YouTube link to a programming video that Raghav created a couple of days ago. Now, this programming video is a prerequisite for the video we'll be doing right now because it covers some extremely important concepts like integers, strings, arrays. These are all extremely important concepts that you really need to learn, especially if you're a beginner, and you'll be using it in the contest for sure. So make sure to check this video out. And then another helpful resource is when you go to Contest 1 and you go to Study Guides, there is this live document that me and Raghav are working on, which has the programming terms that you need to know for the contest and for programming altogether. So, as mentioned earlier, this just has a lot of the most important terms to know, like integers, strings, and characters. And actually, before watching Raghav's video, I recommend that you read through this because it has like the most fundamental topics that you need to know to actually understand what all of these actually mean in the context of programming. So make sure to check those two resources before watching this video. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So this is the 2019 ACSL Junior Division Contest 1 FRQ. And remember, Contest 1 is only on computer number systems. So you shouldn't see anything strange like trees or like binary trees or anything we haven't been practicing so far. Okay, so the problem. Given a positive integer, call it n, a position in that integer, call it p, and a transition integer, call it d, transform n as follows. Okay, so another thing to note when doing these ACSL FRQ questions is obviously this is junior division and they won't be expecting you to write the entire JavaScript. You only need to write down the code for one function out of like 3 or 4 different functions. So they're not expecting you to write down the entire code. And the other thing to note is that how they're going to do it in the contest is they'll give you, it's exactly like this pretty much. They'll give you the inputs, like what types of inputs are going to be there. And then they'll give you 2 examples for you to test your code and see how well it's performing. And then that's going to be a bulk of it. And then the 5 points that you're given, because the short answer questions are 5 points and the programming question are 5 points. And this is what the 5 points are based off of. It's random numbers that they'll give you after you finish submitting your code to test if it actually works. So you won't have access to these, but using just these 2 examples and a bit of testing of your own, you should be able to get the major points of the code correct so that when you go through these test scenarios, your code is ready to solve those questions. But okay, let's continue reading. If the position digit of n from the right, remember from the right, not from the left, is from 0 to 4, add d to it. Remember, d is a transition integer, so you're going to add d to the position integer from the right. Then you want to replace the position digit by the units digit of the sum. Okay, the units digit can be a little confusing because it's like 4th grade math, and I'm sure a lot of us have probably forgotten it. But if you take the number 457, for example, 7 will be the units digit. Okay, so you want to take the position digit from the right, add the value d to it, and then replace that position digit by the units digit of the sum. Then you want to replace all digits to the right of the position digit by 0. Okay, and that's the first condition for transform n. And then if you look at the second condition, If the position digit from n from the right is from 5 to 9, you want to subtract the value d from it. Okay, so from 0 to 4, you add, and from 5 to 9, you subtract. That's an extremely important thing to also consider. So make sure that you are like writing these down or underlining them on a separate sheet of paper. Okay, and then after that, you want to replace the position digit by the leftmost digit. So in the first step, it said you want to replace it by the units digit, which is the rightmost digit. But here it's saying you want to replace the leftmost digit. So make sure you are keeping track of these key differences between the two. Sorry, let me just erase that. Make sure you are keeping track of the key differences between these two. That's what can cause serious errors when you're actually doing your coding. Okay, and then you want to replace all the digits to the right of the position digit by 0. And that part is the same between the two. So what they're basically saying here is that let's say that the position digit from the right for one of your numbers is 5, right? And then let's say the value for D is 6. So as you can see here, you're going to subtract 6 from 5, which gives you -1. But remember, it says you want to use the absolute value of the difference. And the absolute value is basically just the positive value of the number. So the absolute value of 1 is just 1 because it's the positive value of 1, which is basically just 1. But if you take the absolute value of -1, your value is going to be 1 also because it's the positive value of that digit. And then if we were continuing to follow the steps, you would want to replace the leftmost digit by this absolute value difference. Okay, and then let's just look at a few test scenarios so we just like formalize ourselves with what the directions are asking. So you have a number, whatever this number is, and then you have the position digit, the position integer, and then you have the transition integer, which was prefaced here. So the second, okay, so this is the position digit, right? The second digit from the right is 3, and let's just go ahead and check that. 1, 2. From the right, remember? And the second digit is 3. And then you want to add that because 3 is between 0 and 4, so you want to add the value of D to it. And as shown in the prompt, D is equal to 8, so you want to add 8 to the value of 3 here, which is equal to 11, as shown over here. And then you have the number 11, right? And since the position value from the right was 3, and 3 is in between 0 and 4, we can simply ignore these steps. We only have to look here, right? So once you've added the value D, you get the number 11, and then you want to replace the position digit, which is 3, by the units digit of the sum. So as just now calculated from doing 3 plus 8 equals 11, the units digit of 11 is 1, because you have 11, and this is the units digit. So you want to replace the 3 with a 1. So then your final answer is just going to be this, except your 3 becomes a 1, which means 7145012, which is exactly what this is. But that's not it, because then it says replace all the digits to the right of the position digit by 0. So this is the digit we just changed. So all the digits to the right, which is basically just 2, are going to be replaced with 0. And that's exactly what we see here, 7145010. Instead of 7145012. So that should make a little more sense. Now let's just go ahead and erase this. Okay, and then going on to example 2. You have this integer n, which is 1540670, and then you're looking at p equals 3, which is the third digit from the right. So it's basically referring to 6, and it actually just mentions that here. Okay, and then you have D equals 54, and that's what they call the transition integer, which means you're going to go to 6, and then depending on whether it's between 0 and 4 and 5 and 9, you're going to add or subtract the value 54. So once we have those integers out of the way, let's go ahead and read this. The third digit from the right is 6. Okay, so unlike the first problem, where the digit was 3, which is in between 0 and 4, this digit is 6, which is in between 5 and 9. So you're going to simply ignore this first step and look just at the second step. So we can go ahead and circle this. So now we're only going to follow all the steps over here. So you first go to the position digit, which is 6. And since 6 is between 5 and 9, you want to subtract the value D from it. So you're going to do 6 minus 54, which is over here. So when you do 6 minus 54, remember for the second step, you want to take the absolute value difference, which means the absolute value difference is just the absolute value of this difference. 6 minus 54 is just negative 48. So when you take the absolute value of that, you get 48. Just plain old positive 48. And then you want to replace the position digit, which is 6, by the leftmost digit. So remember, this isn't like the first one where we use the right digit, it's just the left digit. So the negative 4, or actually positive 4 because it is the absolute value. So then once you replace the 6 with a 4, you're going to see the same number, but in place of the 6, you're going to see a 4. And then after that, you want to replace all digits to the right of the position digit with zeros. So this is the digit we changed, and these two digits, which are to the right, are going to become zeros. And as you can see in the final answer, you have the same numbers until this point, and then 2 zeros to represent that 4 was the number that we changed. So in terms of the logical aspect of this question, it should be making sense by now. But let's go ahead to the coding section. So I've actually already done the bulk of the programming for this, so I'll kind of just be talking through what's sort of going on here. Let me just expand this. Okay, so when you go to the ACSL website and then you start your FRQ question, you're going to see something like this. You're going to see this, which probably wouldn't make too much sense to you at the start, but then you're going to see something called public static void main string args. Now, as mentioned in the previous meetings, this is kind of just the controller for the entire code. These are just different joysticks on the controller, but this is what actually controls the actual code itself. This is the center for the code. And as you can see, we're actually calling this function. See, we create this function transform number and nothing actually happens. But then when you look inside of public static main or public static void main, you'll see that we actually use transform number. So nothing would happen if you don't actually use transform number in the main class. But as mentioned, during the ACSL programming contest, they will already write this function for you. So you don't even have to worry about this. What you will have to code is actually this. So let's go ahead and start. So remember, they just want you to name the function transform n, so this number doesn't mean too much. But okay, let's start off with the function itself. So the first step you want to do is that you want to take all the digits and convert that into a character array. Now, if you go back to the study guide list and actually Raga's video, a character is basically just a single digit or a single value. Unlike strings, which are like a collection of words, right? Like hi. A character is just a single value, like h. And as covered in the study guide, an array is basically just a collection of values that have the same type. And since we are using characters, our array here is going to be using characters. So you'll have the character A, another character B, or another character C. And remember, characters are marked by single quotations and not double quotations. But here's why we're using an array. So if you look at what the question is asking us to do, one of the most important things that it talks about is this position value. Now, the reason for why position is so important is because when you look at the big number itself, you need to make sure that you're on the right position, the right digit when actually traversing this entire number from the right. You want to make sure that you're on the right position number, for example 3, and you don't want to have like any mistakes where you end up being at 5 or at 4 or at 7 or even at 2. You want to be exactly at 3. So to actually go through this entire number digit by digit, the only way is to separate this entire large number, this long number, into individual digits. That way, and make that into an array. That way you can actually look through each digit from the right to the left. And then based on that, you'll be able to actually exchange those digits into adding d or subtracting d, depending on whether the value is between 0 and 4 and then 5 and 9. Allowing you to then make a final integer value that has mostly the same digits, but then you have the corrected digit and then the zeros afterward. So going back here, that's the reason for why we use an array, because it allows us to separate that large number into into each individual value, and allows us to actually go through every single number in that list to find the exact position that we're looking for. And since we are initializing this as a character array, using numbers, the array is going to look something like this, right? Like 1, 2. It's just a character array of all the individual numbers that make up that larger number. So going back to the code, this is how you define an array in Java, or this is how you define an array in Java. And this is actually in the document. So if you have any struggles with trying to remember the syntax, it's all there on in the document. So what we're basically saying here is that for the value of n, n is just the number, remember, like 1, 2, 4, 9, 8, 7. So for the value of n, you want to convert that to a string. So you want to turn that entire number into a string, right? And then you want to turn that string into a character array. So going step by step, what this is going to do is it's going to take the number 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say n equals 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's going to turn 1, 2, 3, 4 into a string of 1, 2, 3, 4. So making it have the double quotations at the end. And then this function here called toChar_array is basically turning that string into an array of characters. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4 as one singular string with double quotations, it's going to turn each character in that string, so 1, 2, 3, 4 individually, and add them as single characters with single quotation marks. So that's what this is doing. It's basically just turning our long integer number here into an array of characters. And then next we see that int length is equal to digits.length. Now, as seen in Raghav's tutorial for arrays, and for you to actually go through the array value by value, you're actually going to need to know the index of that array. And the index of the array, or the index of the array, goes from the 0th index all the way to the last index. But you do want to make sure that when you actually get into here, you do index or length of the entire array minus 1, because you are starting from 0, and you want to make sure that your index is not outside of the total number of digits that are there in that array. But we'll go back to that as we continue this discussion. So assuming the position, which is p, right? Int p is given in the question. So we're going to first consider that if p is in between, so let's say p is greater than the value 0, greater than or equal to the value 0, and p is less than or equal to the length. So what this is saying is that your value of p needs to be a position inside of that array. If you have an array that has the length, or that goes from 1 to 5, right? The 0th index is 1, and the final index is 5. And you want to make sure that you're finding the position of an integer that's actually in the array, or you want to make sure that that position is actually in the array. If you're looking for the 6th position of an integer that's in an array that has the length of 5, obviously it's going to throw an error, because the array has a length of 5 digits and there is no 6th digit. So that's why you'd get an error. So this is just a condition to make sure that your position is actually a position inside of that array. But let's say that you're making this new value digit, right? You want to take the character and get the numeric value of digits, which is length minus p. So the crux of this is that we have now turned that long integer number into individual characters, right? But the question for us to do actual arithmetic operations like adding or subtracting based on whether the number is between 0 and 4 and 5 and 9, we need to convert those character values into integer values. Because remember, we can only do arithmetic with integers or double values. But since we did convert it to a character array, we can't actually do anything with those character digits yet. So using this character.getNumericValue function, now we have the capability to turn each of these individual character values into actual numerical values. So when we looked at the question, the reason why we turned this into a character array is to get individual numbers out of this. That way we can actually traverse through and then add based on whether that position value was between 0 and 4 and then 5 and 9. And in order to do that, we first had to dissect this entire number into individual numbers. And then after that, we have to convert those individual numbers, which are characters now, into actual integer numbers. So by this step, we have now successfully converted we've successfully taken that long integer number and broken it down into individual integer numbers. And basically what this is saying is, so for the value p, you want to get the index from the right side, right? So because as mentioned in the question, p will be the digit from the right side. So making an array representation, right? Let's just say there's like 3 different values here, 1, 2, 3, right? This is the 0th index, and then this is length. Sorry for my handwriting. Length minus 1, all right? And when you want to find the value, okay, so let's say you just took position, right? So instead of saying digits and then just p inside of here, or instead of saying digits and then length minus p, what happens if you just do digits and then the value p? Well, here's what would happen. Let's say your position was 2, right? Let's say that the question specifies that they want you to find the value at the second position in the array, or the second position in the number. That means you would go from the left side to the right side. So you'd be looking at this digit. And since this is 3, it's going to be the same value. But let me actually just change this 1 second. Let's say you add 4 values into this, right? And then let's say p equals 2, and then as mentioned here, it's just digits of p instead of length minus p. So instead of this, it'll just be p. You may be wondering, what's the difference? Well, here's the difference. If you do p equals 2, it's going to go from the left to the right. So it means you'll be reading through this entire number from the left side. So your second digit would be something like 2, whereas it's actually supposed to be 8, because remember, they want you to read it from the right side. But let's say you change it to length minus p. Well, here's the difference. You're now looking from the right side to the left side, because if p equals 2 and the length is 4, then you'll be, or let's say, so p equals, let's look at this example, right? P equals 2 and the length of this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you do 6 minus 2, you're basically looking at the 4th index, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is exactly the number that we were looking for. And that basically represents going through the array from the right side. All right, so that's why we're doing length minus 5 and then taking the index of that value, or taking the index of the array and then getting that value and converting that character value to an integer value.